started Saturday morning off at the LA flower market, something I like to do regularly. I usually go with Brennan, but he couldn't go this time because he had a work commitment, so I went solo. And when I first did a lap around the entire market, there was really nothing that was catching my eye. There was nothing new. And I think I even texted Brennan and I'm like, there's nothing here today, which was premature. I went to Gather Flora, which is my favorite stall at the flower market, and I saw some nice things like David Austin roses, which I always love, and I ended up buying some sweet pea from them because they looked very healthy, they smelled great, and they just created a pretty ethereal cloud of pastel colors. I had a nice chat with Kate at Gather Flora. I think she's one of the owners. They specialize in more natural flowers, things that are more local and not using pesticides. I always love what they have. Ever since I saw that display at Dries Van Noten of apple branches with little apples in a tulip vase, I've been looking for something like this. I actually found out that the person who does the flowers at Dries Van Noten, her name is Juju, takes many of these branches from her own garden. So can you imagine how incredible this garden is? At Gather Flora, they didn't have apple branches, but they did have pomegranate branches, and they looked great, except the fruit was kind of big and a little heavy. So unless you're doing an incredibly large display, it just wouldn't make any sense. I also picked up some poppies from another vendor. And I find this about markets, whether it's a flower market or a flea market. Once you find one good thing, then if you revisit where you've already been, you'll find all these other great things that you just overlooked the first time. And that's definitely what happened. On the way back from the flower market, I stopped by the Korean grocery store in Little Tokyo. It's kind of a Korean-Japanese supermarket. And I love going here. Not least because it reminds me of my mom. I used to take her grocery shopping here once a week, and she really liked to take her time. She would take over an hour just looking at every single thing in the store. And sometimes I would stay for that hour. Sometimes I would just go for a coffee and come back in an hour and find her. But I haven't been there in a little while, so it was nice to be there and to see what's in season. Apparently plums are in season. And it came in such beautiful colors. I think that this sign was made specifically for my mom. It says, take only the produce bags that you need, because my mom had this problem when it came to produce bags. She would just take them till she had a huge wad of produce bags. And I don't know if she ever used them. I'm not sure what that was all for. But she must have not been the only one doing that to warrant a sign in the supermarket. I got some lunch while I was there, unagi with a side of chache. I ate it as soon as I got home, and it was especially good. The eel was especially unctuous this time. All the flavors and textures just worked so perfectly. It was a great lunch. So as soon as I got home, I started arranging the flowers. Mind you, I was meant to work from home that day, so I wanted to just make a nice environment so that I could focus on the computer. First, I arranged the sweet pea and the poppies together in this kind of flamboyant pink vase. I think this arrangement is looking so good. There's something about the texture of the petals of the poppies, kind of like crepe paper, and the colors are very much in the same palette as the sweet pea. And I like how most of the poppies have this green shell, which will open up and reveal a full bloom throughout the week. And something else I noticed at Gather Flora were forget-me-nots. This was such a surprise. I've always had a fascination with forget-me-nots because they're just so simple and the color is beautiful. I've tried to grow them from seed in my own garden, but they never took. I don't think the climate is right, just not the right set of circumstances. But I feel that I've seen forget-me-nots in Renaissance paintings, so that's an extra point of attraction for me. And there seem to be so many in this bunch. I finished one bouquet, then it turns out I had so much more. So I was able to put some in a bud vase like this. And in another vase for the mantelpiece in the living room. And even some left over for this cool tulip vase that I found a few weeks ago. Okay, I know I'm supposed to be working from home, and I will in just 1 minute, but I want to show you what I'm going to listen to. It's the Apollo record from Brian Eno with Daniel Lanois and Roger Eno. This is such an incredible masterpiece of ambient music. I'm so glad I found it on vinyl. And last but not least, I'm going to light this candle. It says Hiver en Russie, but it's not. I got the Muguet candle refill the last time I was at Guerlain, and it fits in this vessel perfectly. So I'm going to light this and get to work. Okay, I think I adequately set the scene to be working from home. And I did. I was able to get some work done on the computer. Later on, Brennan asked me if I wanted to go to the Bead store, and the answer was yes. A while ago, we were at Dries Van Noten, of course. We go there a lot just to get inspiration. There's always beautiful things to see. And we saw these interesting brooches or these pins that had lots of beads hanging from the pin. Really, really beautiful. And in fact, on one of the mannequins, that piece of jewelry was put on one of the jackets and it just looked really cool. The colors were incredible. But the price was very unforgiving and it seemed way too much to spend for a piece like this. Well, at least for us. But mostly we thought it's because we can probably make something like this. And I know we have those ideas all the time, like, oh yeah, I can make something like that. I'm not going to buy it full price. But then you never get around to actually doing it. And I thought this will go in that category of never getting around to doing it. Because also it seems that most of the bead stores in Los Angeles are closed on the weekends, which is kind of weird. I mean, not many places in LA are closed 2 days a week to start. But Brennan did find a bead store in San Marino, so we decided to go over and check it out. And I'm so glad we did. It was such a nice store, and the woman working there was so informative and so kind. She had these incredible red nails, and I wish that I got some video of it. Some sort of a technique, you know, when you use a magnet and you get a tiger's eye effect, but it was all red. And I just couldn't stop looking at them as she showed us tweezers and pliers and different tools that we might need. In fact, she was so kind. We showed her a picture of the brooch from Dries Van Noten, and she looked at the price and she's like, oh, I can't believe they're charging that. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it's overpriced. It's a work of art. I just know that we could probably reproduce it for very little money. So she showed us all the things that we need. Wire, and we looked through all the beads. There were so many to choose from. So we picked up some cat's eyes and polished agate, stones that look like jade, except I don't think they're actual jade. Brennan got some jasper, We both got some lapis. Everything was coming together, and she was kind of telling us what we'd have to do with stringing the beads and creating loops and putting them onto rings, and it was a lot to take in while she was talking, and I just hoped that it would just kind of come to us as we went along. When we left that store, we realized that we didn't have everything we needed. We didn't have those big pins. I don't know if you call them a skirt pin or a diaper pin. So I just Googled it, and it turns out that they had them at Michael's craft store. And there was one very close to where we were. It was just in Pasadena. So the next stop was Michael's. And to my surprise and delight, it was in full-on Halloween mode. Almost chaotically so, but pretty cool. We did find the pins at Michael's, but guess what? They also had all these signs that said, get 3 strings of beads. I didn't even realize that Michael's Crafts had a bead section. I guess I've never looked for beads before, but they do. And the sign said, get 3 beads, get 3 free. And they were already pretty inexpensive, so we thought we need to, okay, this is becoming a lifestyle choice. We were getting so many supplies that we thought this is going to cover more than 2 brooches. We're going to be making a lot of jewelry with these beads, but we may as well. We bought the tweezers. So that night, after dinner, we started bead making. It was a lot of fun. Now, we didn't really know what we were doing, and at some point, Brennan looked up a YouTube tutorial on his phone about how to finish something off, and I'm glad he did. It goes to show that we should incorporate craft night more into our lifestyle. It's fun. At the bead store, she was explaining to us that they actually have parties. You can rent out the space for not much money at all, and then each guest would be $15. And then you have access to the store. I mean, you'd have to pay for the materials and all that, but not the tools. You can use theirs. And I think they would even give some instruction. We thought this would be really fun. We actually know enough people who would be into something like this, so it's definitely something we're considering for the future. But now that we have some materials, we might just have small craft parties at home. I don't know if this is actually going to happen. We don't entertain very often. But I have to say, at the end of all this crafting, we were so happy with the results. They looked beautiful. Here's the one that I made. Now I gotta say, it's kind of heavy with all these beads. I love the chains. We stole that idea directly from the Dries Van Noten jewelry. And they sold the chains at the bead store. It's not real silver and gold, but that's what kept the cost way down. The challenge is how to wear something like this, because it is kind of heavy, and I don't want to pierce like my favorite clothing with this big pin. I'm gonna have to experiment. I think at Dries Van Noten, in the buttonholes of the lapel, it was put through and it just kind of worked. So I'll experiment with that. And here's the one that Brennan made. I love the story that this is telling with this little pendulum here and this nice drop of dark red at the bottom. So cool. That night, we put our handiwork on the glass top table. We just admired listening to music. Well, now we have all the tools and everything we need, and because it's our new thing, we'll probably be on the lookout for interesting beads wherever we go and just start picking them up. So, scent-wise today, I haven't tried this combination yet, but I'm going to tell you about it and put it on right now. I've been thinking a lot about iris. Now, last week I said in the video that I'm thinking of having a perfume made for me, sort of for my brand, and it will be called Steve. And I love all of your ideas. And there were definitely recurring themes. Many of you said that there will definitely be patchouli in the scent, and I completely agree with that. There has to be patchouli and florals. And several people specifically said iris. That's exactly what I was thinking too. I have a fascination with iris, but very specifically the bearded iris, the kind that you can just plant at home. And I see all over the place in the springtime. When people refer to iris in perfume, they're usually referring to orris, the root of the iris. And apparently the most prized ones are Iris palladia from Florence, Italy. And apparently this material is incredibly expensive. When it's used in perfume, I love what it does. It creates this beautiful texture and makes it somewhat vegetal, kind of waxy, other times powdery. And I've said this so many times in these videos that when I smell iris in a scent, it always seems to give it an air of luxury. But that's not necessarily the smell that I'm after. I'm after those big bearded irises that I see walking around. And they grow in all climates. As a kid in Pennsylvania, I love them. And I see them here in LA. And the inside of the bloom are these yellow fuzzies. That's what's so different from the supermarket iris. There are no fuzzies in those. And they don't have any scent. But the bearded irises have a beautiful scent. I think it's coming from the yellow fuzzy caterpillars inside the bloom. And I've been trying really hard to describe that smell because I've never smelled it in a perfume and I love it. So I think it has the ionones, which you get from iris root, but also from violet leaf. But very specifically, I also smell fennel, like sweet fennel, and maybe a touch of sweet lemon. I'm not sure how the scent can be made using aroma chemicals, but I want to do an experiment. I have two of my favorite iris fragrances here, and I'm going to put them on next to each other, and then I'm going to spray on a little bit of Cédrat Céreuse from L'Artisan Parfumeur, because this is the perfect fennel scent. It's beautiful. This reminds me, my cousin, Daniel, actually DM'd me, and he says that he likes watching the videos. Thank you, Daniel. I didn't know you watched them. And he wanted to know what I thought about applying fragrance. How do you put perfume on? You know, there's always this idea, it's really old school, that you spray in the air and you walk into it. I don't really do that with any scent because I think it's kind of a waste. Most of it is just going in the air and not going on you. I think this is maybe more of a technique that you could have done decades ago when, frankly, most perfumes were just stronger. Like if you get something from the 70s or 80s, it'll be really strong compared to a lot of perfumes that are released now. So no, I wouldn't use that technique. When I'm asked this question, I usually say, you have to wear it a few times and play with it to see how the perfume wears. Each perfume is different, and you don't know the strength of it and the best way to wear it until you've worn it a few times. Generally speaking, what I do is I spray on each wrist, I spray around here, and if it's not a super strong fragrance like this Molecule 1 plus Iris, I'll definitely give myself a good mist of it. A lot of the women I work with also spray on back of their necks. This is a thing. So if you have long hair and you kind of want to trap in some scent and then just release it as you walk around, you might try that technique. So this here is Iris Silver Mist. It's a legendary scent from Serge Lutens, a legendary perfume brand. And this is the iconic bell jar. So obviously with a scent like this, there's only one way to apply it. You just dab some directly on your skin, which is what I'll do. That's stunning. I haven't worn this in a while. It's truly stunning. And that beautiful iris texture is in full view right now. Okay. Layering is all hit or miss. It's all trial and error. You just have to try it and see what happens. But one thing I never do is apply on top of each other, because you'll just cancel out and then you won't get the benefits of either scent. You'll probably only smell the scent that's on top. So what I do is I spray next to, close enough that they can start mingling in the air. That's smelling really great. I'm not entirely sure if it's telling a cogent story yet, so I'm gonna let things dry down. I'm gonna go about my day and see what happens. And to top everything off, just a little bit of a polish. I'm gonna put on Molecule 01 plus Iris, maybe on the back of my arm, and once on the shirt. I refer to my friend Dana as a scent sculpture, a walking scent sculpture, because she's the queen of layering. She wears at least 4 things at a time, and it always works. She sprays different spots. So, like I said, she's a walking scent sculpture. I have a little bit of that going on today with this combination. I'll get back to you later with how this works out. Now, of course, I love hearing from you. I get so many ideas. In fact, I think I answered some of the questions posed in the comments, so please keep asking them. Is there anything you want to know about perfume? If I know the answer, I will let you know. Also, are there any combinations that you do that work? I told you about that hack to get the smell of Gaillac 10 from Le Labo. You just wear Molecule 01 with Kiehl's Musk at the same time, and it really gets you there. It's kind of crazy. Thank you again for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time.